Let Dan have time to answer questions. If y'all can just kind of be quiet a little bit. we kind of got a little noisy at the other end, so I'd appreciate it. Dan, thank you.
All right, thanks. Yeah, definitely. I'm here all day. I don't fly out till tomorrow. Ask as many questions as you'd like. Let me see if I have anything left worth sharing with you all. Native vines. I guess you already found out what I'm all about. Those of you who were here before, I, a long time ago, decided to specialize in clematis, which now we are allowed to call clematis as well. It's official. It's in a dictionary as a secondary pronunciation. But I've been a production nurseryman for about 25 years now, and broke away from my last day job in 2002 when Brushwood became much of both of them. And it's been no looking back since. And it's an absolute joy, and because of my specialty in just vines and climbers, I've gained a certain amount of knowledge that I've found useful and I like sharing with other people. And I'll also ask questions at the end too, some people. Based on your experience here in this climate, because everywhere I travel to speak, things are a little bit different, and so I still have plenty to learn myself. So the way we do this is we're going to go through a bunch of different ways of using vines, some techniques. We're going to stop in and talk specifically about some vines, and those are featured on your handout there. They'll be I'll say the name, and the name will be written on the slide as well for a quick reference for you. So what is a vine or climber? It's a plant with relatively long stems, which depends on other plants or surfaces for support. They may get that support by means of tendrils, twining around other objects, use of aerial rootlets, or by merely sprawling over another plant. In the case of climbing roses, that's where you get that sprawl effect, and the prickles also actually help to hold the plant as it climbs up. This is Rosa Satidra, and the photo was taken by the side of the highway in eastern Tennessee. Absolutely pretty, beautiful, lightly fragrant. It's only once blooming, but certainly worth a second look. Grows to about 15 feet tall, hardy from zones 4 through 9. Easy care. That's a hallmark of a lot of these natives, is that they're generally very tolerant and easy to take care of. I was actually driving my teenage son and his friends back from the Bonnaroo Music Festival when I spotted this by the roadside. And naturally, my car already knows what to do. And these sleepy, smelly, tired teenage boys, what's going on? I said, guys, look, it's Rosa Satidra in bloom. My son groaned, yes. Oh, yeah. My car knows what to do. Anyway, so vines by their very nature are opportunistic. So it's important to think and plant appropriately. Now, I used to lecture mostly up in the north, but since moving to Georgia and lecturing more around in the south, I found that southern gardeners just understand. So why do we grow our vines? There are a lot of really great reasons. It can be as simple as wanting to beautify a space. This is, of course, Campus radicans, our native trumpet vine, and it is certainly quite lovely. And I hear whispers of the word invasive. I hear people already talking about it. I'm going to say something and some of you will frown. Campus radicans is not invasive. It's a native. It cannot be, by definition, invasive. Okay? Is it a garden stud? Yeah, you betcha. You got to know you want it, and you got to put it where it's going to stay and fray, and it's going to. It really can get out of hand. It is not invasive. Okay, there's a difference there, definition. Is it suitable for a small garden space? Probably not. I have seen it grown really beautifully in a very large container though, where it could not get away. And that's something to think about. You're limiting its fertility, you're limiting its access to water, and you're keeping those runners from running all over the place. So that's a good possibility. There are a number of really interesting selections of the species. Now, some folks would argue that this is no longer working with natives, but it is not a hybrid. It's merely a selection of the species I'm talking about. This one was found in southern New Jersey. This is Kansas Jersey peach, discovered by a friend of mine, Andrew Bunting. And another really nice one, this is Minnesota red, a nice rich color form. Now, a lot of folks are really into native plants, and there's a level of purity that some ascribe to that others don't, and that's that it must be grown from seed. Okay? So, I'm personally more of a fan of, yes, if you're going to work with natives, at least get superior selections of those natives. But if you want to grow them from seed, start with a good selection. These are the seed pods of Campus radicans. And I would say if you really want to grow from seed, get seed from Jersey peach. If you want to try for something that's got some yellow, get seed from Minnesota red. You get a better chance of having something that is a proven selection, but you can still get that genetic diversity that you crave. This is what they look like when they pop open. Very easy from seed, these little papery things. Really a straightforward growing product. This is Passiflora incarnata, as long as we're talking about invasive, non-invasive. It is also very vigorous. It will send runners, but it's a beautiful plant, and it is also a really great larval food source and pollinator food source. As far as the larvae, you've got the Gulf fritillary and the variegated fritillary butterflies. As far as pollinators are concerned, the butterflies will drink the nectar as well. You'll get bumblebees and various other species of bees are going to visit those flowers and enjoy them. If you get the frits, the butterflies, sometimes you're going to have to be a little bit selective because there are a lot of very successful caterpillars on there. They can mow your plant down and really set it back for the year. So at some point, if you're going to allow that, I think that's great. You know, you're promoting wildlife in your garden, but you may want to selectively pick off some of the caterpillars if you don't have natural predation on them.
It's any color shown on your website on these.
Yes, absolutely.
Go to your website, we can tell what the everything is.
Yeah. So far, things that are here featured so far now are better and more floriferous in full sun. They'll all tolerate shade, but the flowering is going to be a little bit less. The native honeysuckles can take lower light levels, but again, the darker you get, the less flowers you're going to get. There are selected forms of Passiflora incarnata. Here's a really nice one that I like. It's a pure white. This is Alba shown here, and we're now working with another brand new one that somebody found in the wild, and the flowers are 50% larger. And it's already been named and registered, and it's in production now. It's called Supernova. Correct. Yeah, Incarnata alba and Supernova are both species selections. They were found in the wild. The difference is that we're propagating them from cuttings in order to maintain that particular look for that particular form. I'll talk a little bit more about why we do that here in a minute. There are other functional reasons for growing native vines. Here's Aristolochia macrophylla, which you'll still find sometimes listed as durior. It is native, I know it and have seen it grown in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and it makes a terrific shade plant. And it's an old southern shade plant that used to shade people's porches back in the day, and some people still use it that way. Another nice aspect of Aristolochia is that it is deciduous. The foliage is going to drop away for the winter, so this nice, cool, shady spot in the summertime is still going to be useful because it's going to become a sunny spot in the winter. So try to avoid evergreens for that kind of situation.
What's the common name?
Dutchman's pipe. Dutchman's pipe. I'll show you why in just a sec. How about right now? And that's because that's what the flower looks like. It's sort of like the old Meerschaum pipe. Now, the thing about this is the hardy Dutchman's pipes are, the flowers are fairly small relative to the foliage, and they're not really very evident, so it's really grown as a foliage type plant. And also, it is a larval food source for the pipeline swallowtail butterfly. In addition, as they mature, they get this really cool, corky bark. I like it a lot. This is several stems growing up around heady cable. I believe this shot was taken at Longwood Gardens. And this is what the seed pods look like. It's in the photography studio known as the shipping room. And here's a mature seed pod and what the little seeds themselves look like. It's fairly hard to get seed from this, from landscape-sized plant material. It's a little bit easier with the other species I'll mention in a second, but if you find a mature one out in the wild somewhere, if you're ever up in the Blue Ridge, look around the base of it for pods. Sometimes you can find viable seed there. We were just talking before the lecture, why doesn't it produce seed much? There's a combination probably of maturity level and pollinator access. And I'll talk about the pollinator here in just a moment. This is a cousin, this is a fuzzy cousin, this is Aristolochia tomentosa, which doesn't have as large a leaf, but it tends to be a little more floriferous, and the flowers are more readily apparent. I like this one better, actually. And these are the flowers. You can see even the flowers are all fuzzy. And this is what a cross-section looks like of the flower when you cut it open. And you can see there's actually a path down which an insect will have to fly and then crawl and then up into the chamber inside there in order to pollinate. And so it's probably something very specific that it's attracting. I don't know the native pollinator for either of these species. What's kind of neat is there are a number of tropical species as well, and they actually have little trichome hairs in that tube leading downward that the insect can crawl in and not crawl back out again. The tube will have those little hairs will wither after the flower is actually pollinated. So the insect can't escape until it's done its job. Another note on that, the tropical Aristolochias, they're beautiful, they're wonderful, they have huge exotic flowers by comparison to the natives. However, if you're offering them up as a butterfly garden plant, it's not a good choice. The butterfly, the swallowtails, will think it smells and looks right, but the larvae can't exist on the foliage of the tropical species. It actually kills the larvae. So they're not good choices for butterfly gardens. Stick with the natives. Here's another functional use. This is at an old warehouse that's been repurposed into art and studio spaces. And this is early on in the growth of a Carolina jessamine, where there's a little utility area. You can see it's still partially exposed in this first picture here. They've got wheelbarrows and some other stuff in there. Well, it's an evergreen. Okay, so even in springtime it flowers, it's very pretty, but even when it's not flowering, that evergreen screen there hides that utility area. You can use that to surround any ugly, whatever, your ugly neighbor's junkyard. And we call it the chain link hider because it just goes right up on things. This is Gelsemium sempervirens, and then the selection that I like is Margarita. Nice thing about margaritas, most of the Carolina jessamine isn't quite fully hardy up in northern climates. Margarita is fully hardy, fully evergreen, straight up through zone 6. It's a very good selection. Here's another shot of it, actually, in zone 6. Thank you. Oh, thank goodness, the AC stopped. I'm going to lose my voice today, I'm promising that. This is what the seed pods look like. Now, I will say, Gelsemium, you should know, is poisonous. Okay, if you definitely have a dog that likes to eat things, chew on things in the backyard, from my experience, I've never known anybody or any animal to be poisoned by one of these things. But I have to just, in good faith, I have to mention that about the plant. It is definitely poisonous. It is highly deer resistant. So you got to stay away from it. This is Gelsemium Augusta, which is a cute little plant. It's not as hardy as Margarita, but it has these double flowers. It is, if you really, really like double flowers, it's more than just a novelty for you. I would recommend it. But really, Margarita is definitely a better selection overall. Sometimes flowers aren't necessarily the highlight. We talked about Aristolochia macrophylla being about foliage. This is Dioscorea villosa here, which has really, really pretty foliage with interesting veination to it. The flowers are almost non-existent, but this will colonize a shady area of your garden very, very well. And I think the fruit is kind of cool. The flowers you just don't even notice, but the fruit's really neat. It's these little three-sided globular shaped things. Yeah, it's native all over, all the way up through Pennsylvania, out into the, what's that?
It's all over my yard.
Yeah, and when it finds a home, yeah, and if you've got too much of it, it makes an expanding tuberous root system. So you'd have to pull out all of that in order to succeed at getting rid of it, or keeping it in check. You know, that is, again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the lecture, a lot of these native vines are really, obviously they're suited to our climate, and they're going to have the potential to expand beyond where you might want them in a limited garden scope. And then, of course, I have to talk about this. Virginia creeper, Parthenocissus quinquifolia. The foliage is pretty, but a lot of folks don't realize, but the fruit is actually really nice. This is just about the flower here. The flowers aren't very brilliant or anything, but they make a really nice texture in the landscape. And then, of course, the fruit. It's kind of rare for us to see this much fruit, actually, because our native songbirds love the fruit. They eat that. And so you're providing something there for your wildlife in the garden as well.
What was the common name?
Virginia creeper. And of course, you can't miss it for its fall color. It has some of the best fall color around. Absolutely stunning. And this is something to think about when you're considering any planting, is what is another season? Where am I going to find that this has ornament? Is it in the foliage? Is it in the fall color? Is it in the bark in the wintertime when the plant is bare? There are all these other considerations other than beyond just what it shows on the tag at the garden center.
I have a question.
Yes.
I grew that on my brick house, and it kind of got out of control and went up on the eaves of my house, and now, and for 10 years I've eradicated it, so I have these dots, these three, where it's attached.
Right, where the sucker's attached, right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they're like concrete.
Yeah, they're protecting the brick under your house. Oh, I'm sorry. I feel your pain because they can be persistent, yeah.
Well, I'm protected, let me tell you.
Well, yeah.
Because I've been fighting, trying to scrub them off for years.
Have you considered a pressure washer?
Oh, the brick is painted, so that would be a problem.
Yeah, that would, yeah. Yeah, you'd have to repaint after that.
I'm just going to paint the dots.
Yeah, well, they're that durable, so yeah, you paint over them, they'll disappear. Right. Yep. Sure. This is another native passion flower. This one is hardy all the way up into zone 5. This is Passiflora lutea. And it's not particularly brilliant, to be quite honest with you, but the fact that it's so hardy is wonderful. They are small flowers, and they are, yes, greenish yellow. But the fruit is actually kind of pretty. It makes these little purpley grape things, and the native fauna do appreciate that, mostly birds. The fall foliage on it, though, I like. It's a really pretty buttery yellow when it's grown in the sun.
Do the fritillaries like that?
I don't know. I think they're more on the incarnatas and the incarnata hybrids. Yeah. The question was, will the fritillary butterflies go for this? And I have never seen them on it.
Well, I've seen some caterpillars eating those
Okay.
for a lady who was cultivating them.
Do you know what kind of caterpillar it was?
No,
Okay.
the
All right, just
Gulf
curious.
Fred, yeah.
All right. Oh, it was the Gulf Fritz?
Yeah.
Okay, so the Gulf fritillaries should go for the lutea as well. Everywhere I go, I tend to, just like pulling off the side of the road for the Rosa Sativa, I'm always looking for things. And I was camping on a barrier island in southern Georgia a few years ago and came across something a little bit different. I thought, wow, here I found something really cool. It's a whole new species. Well, it turned out it was Passiflora lutea, but a really interesting and different form. You can see the flower is just about the same. But take a look at that foliage. Isn't that great? And some of the luteas will have a little bit of this more lanceolate lobes to their foliage, and that silver seam in the venation there. When the flowers the foliage is young, but then as it matures, it changes. And this holds that shape, form, and color throughout its entire yearly cycle. So we went ahead and named that Passiflora lutea Sapelo. It was Sapelo Island is where I found it growing. And I had an expert who lives out here in the Midwest somewhere. Oh wait, you're in the South. Sorry. He lives in the southern part of the Midwest, and I sent him samples of it in the high-res digitals, and I was so hoping I had found a new species. And he said, "Oh, that's just about the prettiest lutea I've ever seen." So that's how it ended up being lutea sapelo. Now, sometimes the flowers themselves are what we would consider to be out of season in a way. This is climbing aster, or walking aster is another one of its common names. It's Ampilaster carolinianus. It is a monotypic genus, meaning there's only one of them in this genus. It used to be Aster carolinianus, but some enterprising taxonomist decided to make it its own genus. Very, very pretty, very easy to grow plant. Hardy up borderline on zone 6. It's going to be probably mostly herbaceous in this climate here and colder. Down where we're from, it's more deciduous and even tends to evergreen. Blooms extremely late, like we're talking blooms November, December sometimes. It depends on your climate and your year. And we had it blooming straight through January in the nursery, but that's because we're slightly climate controlled. Yes?
Mine blooms for me in October, and the one thing that I love about it is it's fragrant.
Yes, it does have a fragrance.
And
Yep.
there are not
Yep.
very many asters that are that sweetly fragrant.
And it also has, it's attractive to pollinators. I'm a beekeeper as well, and so I notice the various things that the bees end up going to, and they really like this because there isn't a whole lot else going on at that time of year. How early in October for you?
It's pretty early. I would say it's at the beginning of the month.
Wow, that early? Okay, early October, all right. But it continues on for a long time, right?
Yes, but it is on the south side of my house, and everything does typically bloom.
So you've got a maximum exposure going on there, yeah. And do you find that it's also drought tolerant?
Yes, it's very
Yep.
drought
Yep.
tolerant. I have it combined on an arch with the crossvine,
Uh-huh.
and it does very well.
That's great, yeah. I think this is one of those dramatically underused plants. It's very easy to grow, it's very generous. Now its habit, this is it growing at Longwood Gardens, it doesn't twine, it doesn't have tendrils, it's more like a climbing rose in that it has long arching canes, and they tend to crisscross into things and into itself. And this is what it looks like later in the season under certain climate conditions. You can see some nice fall foliage color going on, and again, very, very late blooms.
How large are those flowers?
Each flower is just like the size of a quarter, but you can get thousands on a single plant.
John,
God knows this plant. I did this is an extra credit question, the final exam for my ornamental vines class at Longwood Gardens. And, I mean, we're talking plant people, they're studying the certificate course. And I think only 25% of them got it. Well, this is a wonderful native vine, and very easy to grow. It's got lovely small foliage, as you can see. And the berries there feed our native songbirds. What a great, useful plant, and yet you just don't see it very much in a garden store. Well, of course, for those that haven't figured it out yet, it's poison ivy. We know poison ivy.
Well, that could spoil your garden party.
Touche. All right. Let's talk about some different climbing forms here. We talked about the apple aster being like a climbing rose. This is woodbound, Decumaria barbara, and it is a self-clinging vine, and it is a cousin to the climbing hydrangea and Phytophragmus. Now, I've just been told recently that they've decided to lump them all into hydrangea now. So you may start to see this being referred to as hydrangea barbara. It's a very easy to grow native. It has these beautiful, almost tropical, glossy leaves to it, and fairly pretty flowers too. Not quite as ornamental, I would say, as hydrangea petiolaris, for example. One significant advantage, however, it grows. Hydrangea petiolaris is the slowest daggone thing on the planet, I swear. This will fill a space much faster for you. It's plenty vigorous. It's a very pretty plant. And it likes plenty of moisture as well. The first time I saw this growing in the wild, it had its roots dangling down into an old broken down spring house. Okay, so it likes moisture. We often see it growing by the side of streams. So I would say don't plant it in a bog, but the more moisture you can give it during the growing season, the more successful it's going to be. Now, you need at least partial sun to get this thing to flower well.